Hey guys, LC Holt here, and this is my update for the week of November the 5th. I want to give a couple shout outs here before we get into the show. As you all know, I'm going to be appearing next year in this film here, which is a movie called Butcher's Bluff. We're going to shoot it down in Texas. The Indiegogo campaign on this film is, I believe, 8 days left in it. So if you want to know how you can support this film, Butcher's Bluff, and watch me go up against this monster here, click on over there. You'll find how you can get to it in the description in YouTube, on the thread on Twitter, and in the comments section of Facebook. Now, that aside, I want to give a huge shout out to my buddy Jay Burleson, who directed this movie here called The Nobodies. Now, this is a movie that stars my former co-star, the guy that wore that mask in You're Next, Lane Hughes, stars in this film. Me and Jay were on the show a couple weeks ago talking about it. Jay sent me a copy of it, and I watched it today. And I can tell you, this is one really good, really sick, really interesting movie. So for horror fans who want to see something different, I would say definitely check out The Nobodies. You can find it. It was released through Troma, and you can watch it now on Troma Now, or you can buy a DVD copy of it. And I'll put down in the links and the description of YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all that. I'll put how you can buy it. So, with all that out of the way, I want to introduce my guest for tonight. This is a guy who I've been talking to him for a little while. I wanted to bring him on the show because I wanted to discuss sort of the cross between pro wrestling and horror films. I've done a lot of conventions, and something that I've come to learn is that the fan base of those two mediums sort of blend together very well. I've done several conventions with pro wrestlers. So, Cash Borden. Cash, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. Glad you guys could get me on here.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. You have a show. We'll go ahead and promote it now, and we'll talk about it again at the end here. But you have a show tomorrow night. Do you want to talk a little bit about that event?
Yeah, we got a show for Strictly Insane Pro Wrestling tomorrow night in Crossville, Illinois, and it's to benefit a family, not just one family, but everybody in this area who is dealing with Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease has been a big part of my family. My aunts, uncles, there's a lot of people in my family that have it. So it's really cool to give back, in a good way to help people out with that.
Yeah, well, that's a great cause, man. It's a hell of a disease, Crohn's disease. There was a very famous film director who had Crohn's disease named Dan O'Bannon, who he co-wrote the original Alien, and he directed and wrote Return of the Living Dead. And he really struggled with that for years. It's a tough disease.
Yeah, that's crazy. I did not have no idea about that, man. Return of
Yeah.
the Living Dead is one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can talk too about some horror because I know you're a big horror, fan. It's interesting because in pro wrestling there are very well-known horror-themed characters. Of course, there's probably the most famous is The Undertaker. But there were others. There's even one who wears the mask that I wore in Your Next. And when I do conventions, I often get asked, like, what is it like working with the WWE? And I said, I don't work with the WWE. And they said, well, we saw your mask on the show. And I'm like, that's a totally different guy.
Yeah,
Why?
I'd always wondered about that, man. Like, if there was any copyright laws around that or anything.
Well, that's a good point because it is something that happens often in wrestling, in professional wrestling, is they'll kind of borrow. I mean, obviously with Sting, they sort of borrowed the Crow and then changed it around a little bit. And then, with the Wyatt family, they borrowed, the character that I played in Your Next and sort of changed it. They don't tend to, I think one of the problems that I think people have in terms of the film side of it is they tend not to give a lot of credit to where they got it from. Um, Personally, it doesn't bother me at all. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is real cool. I had remember watching Your Next, and then whenever the Wyatt family had debuted, seeing that mask, and I'm like, I wonder if these are connected somehow. And then nothing ever came about with it.
Yeah, yeah. There's no official connection. I think some folks believe that that I own the character, and I guess as an actor, I have a feeling of ownership toward the character. But if someone say had a copyright infringement, there's nothing I could do. That you'd have to go to Lionsgate and Snoot Entertainment and the people that actually own the film. I'm just the actor that played it. But
Right.
yeah, I don't think there was a lot of like permission asked by WWE or anything like that. Which that's fine. You can't really sue over something until it's. I mean, like for instance, you can't copyright a title. So it's very hard to sue unless it's very specific. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, see though, they're selling those masks at their shows. If they're gonna come out like okay, let's say the Bullet Club and the Young Bucks for that logo right there, the Too Sweet logo. They're suing them over a hand gesture.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why it couldn't be done with the mask. Because I
Well.
mean, like the lamb mask that I got from Hot Topic years ago, and it said "You're next" on it.
Mhm.
Now I went to a show 6, 7 years ago and bought a lamb mask for my little brother that was black, and all it had was a little WWE sticker on the inside of it. When you know that it was damn well that same mask, just colored black.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I'll tell you a story I did. I did a convention in New Jersey, and this is the only time that I kind of objected to it. We were selling the mask that you bought, the one that has Your Next or Lionsgate and Your Next on it.
Yep.
The one that was sold through Hot Topic is an official mask for the movie for Your Next. Um, and we used to sell those at my table when they stopped making them. So we had a large supply of them and we'd sell them and I'd autograph them to people. Now, I did this one convention in New Jersey and I can't even tell you which convention it was. I can't remember. But a guy came up to the table and he was a vendor, selling his wares in the other room. And he said, "Well, how much could I give you?" He was talking to my manager at the time. He said, "How much could I give you for all of the supply of your next mask, the lamb masks?" And so my manager, Stacy, turns to me and she says, "This guy wants to buy all of them. What do you think?" And I said, "Well, what's he want to buy it for? For the movie?" And he's like, "No, he wants to buy it for a booth because he's selling WWE and wrestling stuff." And my reaction, honestly, was just like, no, no. I mean, these are your next masks. The WWE can put out their own masks, and I'm sure they do, as you were talking about. So, yeah, I don't like that kind of a crossover. Like if you buy it from the WWE, it can be Wyatt family. But if you buy it from Lionsgate, let's just say it's what it originally was, which was your next mask. And I
Right.
don't think fans of the WWE would really care too much for a mask to buy a mask that's not an official WWE mask. They would want, that mask. So that sort of a crossover in terms of merchandising, I'm not a big fan of. Because WWE has plenty of money and they can make their own masks. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you can't fight the system like them.
Yeah, yeah. And
Lionsgate can though.
yeah, yeah. It's not really my place to do that. Just on that one instance, when I had some control over it. But yeah, I see the mask you have in the. Now, did you ever use the lamb mask in your in wrestling?
No, I never did because of like, you said you had mentioned the Wyatt family doing it. I like to stay away from anything that is being shown on broadcast TV as far as WWE. Like even my move set's different, everything. Like I don't want people coming to my show, on the weekend or throughout the week and seeing what they just seen on Monday and Tuesday. If they wanted to see that stuff, they could sit at home in the comfort of their own home and watch that on TV.
Right.
That's why I make sure everything I do is original. It's all 100% me. I'm not taking anything from WWE. Now, I steal from horror movies all the time,
Right.
especially in the death matches and stuff like that I do. So,
Well, that's admirable. Let's go back a little bit and let's talk for a second about how you got into wrestling. Was it something you always wanted to do?
yeah, when I was younger, my dad had taken me to Bad Blood in 1997 in St. Louis, Missouri, and it was The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in the first ever Hell in a Cell match. Um, that night, man, like I had liked wrestling, but on that night, that changed everything for me. Just seeing how much that everyone hated Shawn Michaels, they were throwing trash at him. He was bleeding all over the place. That is also the same night that Kane came for the first time. So nobody had seen Kane, and then all of a sudden he showed up that night. Um, but yeah, I mean, it just changed my whole outlook on wrestling in general. And I was like, man, I remember telling my dad, like, I want to be Shawn Michaels one day, and him getting so pissed off at me. No, no, you're not. You're not going to be Shawn Michaels. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, Dad, I am. I want to be that douchebag that everybody hates.
Now, when did you first start wrestling in a sort of an independent circuit?
I started wrestling like as soon as I got out of high school, man. Like, I'm from a very small town. Everybody here in this town, it's like you go and you work at a factory for your whole life, or you become a drug dealer or a drug addict, or you end up in jail. That is the only thing that anybody's ever been known for around here. And I mean, I seen my friends, family going down the wrong path, and I just did not want to be like that at all. Um, and I remember telling everybody when I was younger in high school and everything that I wanted to be a pro wrestler, when I got older. And they would all laugh at me. No, you're too small. Um, I even had teachers tell me this. Every time they would send out the yearbooks and they'd ask you, what do you want to do with your life when you grow up and everything like that. And then I'd be like, I want to be a professional wrestler. They would all laugh at me and tell me, no, there's no way that that can happen. And then actually, the first time that I had a show, it was at my high school. And the chaperones for that show were all those teachers that told me that I would never be a pro wrestler.
Mm.
So I got to kind of rub that in their face that night. But
Yeah,
yeah, I just didn't want to
it's
go
always
ahead.
fun to
Sorry.
do. That's always fun to do when you can say, "Well, look at me now," you know.
Yeah, yeah, it was awesome, man. Just walking out there and just looking at them dead in their eyes, like, yeah, you guys told me I couldn't do this, but here I am, you know. But yeah, I didn't want to go down the path of working in a factory my whole life. I still hold down a real job outside of wrestling because wrestling doesn't pay the bills, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I wanted to do something, man. I wanted to say that, I've been a champion of this place, this place. Wrestling has taken me from Florida all the way to New Mexico to West. I just got back from West Virginia this weekend. I mean, it's given me a lot of really cool things. I've wrestled for Insane Clown Posse. They do the Gathering of the Juggalos every year. I've had Tech Nine open for me, 15,000 people. I mean, there's not a lot of people who can say that they've had big crowds like that, at a show that they're performing at.
Yeah. Well, I noticed we're sort of losing your camera there a little bit, but for those of you who can only hear, then we'll play this sort of like an old-fashioned podcast. Well, that's pretty amazing, man. I mean, the gathering of the Juggalos is that's a big deal, you know.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's very insane, man. The crowd is insane there.
yeah. Oh God, I know. Yeah, I've met some Juggalos, and it's a fun group. That's also sort of blends into the horror, world. I have many Facebook friends who are Juggalos, and they're good folks. So let's go back to like the beginning of your sort of persona. Now, were you always the heel in wrestling?
Yeah, pretty much. When I started out, actually my whole persona and everything was different. I went by Cash Cavens, which Cavens is my real last name. I went by that, and the whole gimmick that I portrayed was like a Marky Mark, white boy rapper.
Yeah.
And then I went and did a couple tryouts for a couple different companies, and then had ran into some people that were like, man, like this character, this gimmick, that it's just not working for you. I wore baggy pleather shorts, um, jerseys and stuff like that. It just did not look professional at all, which nowadays that would fit perfectly fine in pro wrestling. But back then in 2006, 2007, people that were wanting you to make it somewhere, they didn't want you to dress like that. They wanted you to have actual trunks, gear, and stuff like that. Um, I still do not follow those guidelines now, being the wrestler that I am now, because like I said, it is 2018.
Yeah.
Um, you can turn on WWE now and you see people wrestling in a wife beater and jeans. You know, it's all about being unique and being able to carry yourself as this unique person.
Yeah. Yeah, because you do have, at least when I was younger, I see the cameras return there. When I was younger, um, the traditional wrestling uniform was always like the Hulk Hogan type trunks, and everything like that. And occasionally, then it started to change. You had the Undertaker, who I remember vividly when he was always sort of dressed. I mean, he had the kind of the mortician thing going, and then he kind of went into the Harley dude, and that was around the time when things started to change, and you could see people were breaking the rules in terms of what a wrestler looks like. Um, Now, were you a fan of, say, like the ECW?
Oh yeah, ECW, man, that was back when I was younger, it was so hard to get a hold of and watch it once because like it was on I think like Spike TV or TNN at the time, and then
Hmm.
like it wouldn't come on until maybe midnight, 1 in the morning. So it was always hard to catch the shows. But then once you finally did, man, I'd sit there for that hour, hour and a half, and just be mesmerized by the things that they were doing on there.
So, who would you say was the biggest influence on you, and in terms of your style and the persona of wrestlers that you grew up with?
I'd probably say Raven,
Hmm.
Raven and Vampiro. I did a seminar with Vampiro, and he taught me a lot about, just how to, psychology wise, how to run a match, how to place everything together like it's a puzzle. Only do things that you know that you can do and that are crisp and clean and look good. He taught me that aspect of that. And growing up watching him as a kid, man, I mean, it was just always awesome watching Vampiro. And, but yeah, I'd say a lot of the way that I carry myself nowadays is a lot like Raven was back in the day.
So, back when you started, in terms of how you would set up a match, were you taught how to actually go through the motions, plan it out? Is that something you still use, or do you just sort of wing it? I mean, how in turn, because I know some people who were wrestlers who I've known have talked about how it was very, very choreographed, or at least they were taught to do it in such a way it was very, very choreographed. Others seem to suggest that it's loosely sort of choreographed. I'm just kind of curious where how that started out with you, and what that sort of method is with you.
Yeah, there in the beginning, man, is like you just wanted to make sure you wasn't going to mess up. There in your first couple of matches, it's so nerve-wracking. You'll sit there and you'll run through every movement of that match in your head over and over and over. And then it's like, well, nowadays I don't do that at all. I I'll talk about maybe the end, what's going to happen, and then I like to go out there and just play it by ear and fill out the crowd. Um, I've been wrestling now for 13 years, so a lot of people that I wrestle with, they know the moves that I do and stuff like that. So I don't really have to go through the motions on, hey, you're going to land like this when I pick you up this way or something like that. A lot of the guys I work with are very well trained and they know how to take their bumps right, and they're not going to hurt themselves whenever I'm out there with them.
Are there people that you still have matches with now that are way back from when you started?
Yeah, there is actually, I'd say at least three people that are still around. Whenever I started in 2006. It was right when I graduated high school, and two of my good friends was with me. Um, they didn't last, I think, maybe 3 months apiece, both of them. Um, they just couldn't handle how rough it was, traveling, stuff like that. And then even nowadays, the shows that I do that are closer around here, maybe in the 20-40 mile radius, a lot of the wrestlers there, they don't go outside that box and try to pursue and get their name out there. And I mean, if you really want to make it somewhere in this business, that's what you have to do. You have to promote yourself. You have to get your name out there, get it in magazines, keep it circulating. Because if not, there's another guy right behind you who is willing to put in all those miles of travel and take your name right out of that magazine and place theirs there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's very, very similar to the acting world, in that way. And the people who make it tend to be the people who will go, all the way. They're the people that know how to network and people that know how to work within the world. And I'm sure with wrestling, it's very similar. That is a world that you have to be in for a while, and then eventually you learn how it operates and how you need to operate within it in order to be successful. And that's very important, whether it be in any area of entertainment. Each one has specifics that are, unique to that. But it is very, very important to do that. Now, I wanted to go into what was the first wrestling federation that you were a part of in terms of doing it, like for real?
That wrestling organization was called NCW, National Championship Wrestling. That is where I trained. It was in Paris, Illinois. Actually, 3 months into my training, my trainer got paralyzed right in front of me in a match. And that really made me, step back and look like, okay, is this really what I want to do here with my life? But here I am still doing it. He was laying on a table and a guy did a leg drop off the top rope and it broke his back and he's
Oh,
never been able to walk since. So I mean,
man.
yeah, it's very scary.
Yeah, I mean, and you were talking about, taking the bumps and everything. It's a very physical. I mean, even if the matches are, predetermined and so forth, it's you can get hurt so easily.
Yeah, I broke every finger, I've broke every toe, I've broke my nose numerous times. Actually, the first title I ever won was in a ladder match, and I broke my arm. That was in Metropolis, Illinois. I had no idea my arm was broke. I finished the match, won the belt, and then I drove back home for 2.5 hours. Then once I got home, I was like, all right, yeah, this pain hasn't went away. I probably do need to go to the ER.
Yeah, yeah. But you do some pretty hardcore matches. I've seen some of the matches you do now, and it's no joke, man. I
Yeah,
mean,
here recently, man, I've just stepped into the death match world of wrestling. Um, coming up early in the business, deathmatch wrestling was always looked at like, backyard stuff, like kids in the backyard doing the stupid stuff. Um, I did Prince of the Death Match at the beginning of this year, and Prince of the Death Match is for IWA Mid South, and it is something like, okay, Prince of the Death. If you win Prince of the Death, you get put in King of the Death Match. Now over in Japan, they have King of the Death Match, which they're kind of loosely tied together. That is what Mick Foley, Terry Funk used to do back in the day. You would hear them doing about having no rope barbed wire matches with C4 explosions and stuff like that. I never ever thought that I would get into that kind of stuff. But yeah, I got the invite to be in Prince. I did it. And as soon as I did that, man, like my face value, everything just started going through the roof. Everybody wanted to book me more. I was getting paid a lot more to wrestle. Um, but yeah, I mean, you can blend in professional wrestling with that style of wrestling and still tell a story. You just have to be smart about it. You don't want to go out there and just, two guys right off the bat just bashing each other with weapons. No, you want to lead up into that slowly. You know what I'm saying? You still want to tell a story of why you're going to use this barbed wire bat against this dude's face in the long run of the match. But yeah, I just it's been roughly almost a year now that I've been in these deathmatch tournaments and going through panes of glass and fire, light tubes, barbed wire, staple guns, syringes. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. But then again, when fans see that type of thing happen, no matter who's on the card, okay, say Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, Kevin Nash, Diesel, say they're on the same show that I'm on. Those fans are always going to remember seeing their faces. But you know what match they're going to remember when they leave years and years down the road? They're going to remember seeing me take that light tube over that dude's head or me falling through a pit of light tubes. So that's really cool knowing that I'm doing stuff that people are never going to forget. And just like in West Virginia, the guy that I was wrestling, he was barefooted. I remember he threw a kick at me. I caught his foot, threw it up on the ring apron, and grabbed an 8x10 of myself and proceeded to give him paper cuts in between his toes. And everybody in the crowd, I mean, they just lost their shit. They were, you sick fuck, you sick fuck. I mean, it's just amazing, man.
That is awesome. Yeah, that is a completely. I don't think I've ever seen that before. It's like the death of a thousand cuts thing, where this guy just gets, a guy with a scalpel is just going to get you. That was the original ending of the original Last House on the Left. I don't know if you ever heard that story, but Wes Craven was going to do a death of a thousand cuts with a guy, but instead the producers were like, no, chainsaw. But originally the main character, he was the surgeon, was going to have a scalpel. And he was just going to start to nick the guy. And he was like, I know where your carotid artery is, and just start nicking him, all over the place. And eventually he would just kill him from a lack of blood loss, having cut him thousands of times. But
Yeah, that's cool, man. I didn't know that at all. That's awesome. I might just start calling that spot that now. Death of a Thousand Cuts.
yeah, that sounds like a pretty badass name for a wrestling match, actually, come to think of it. But
Yeah.
so is there anything that you would not do?
I mean, razor wire is one thing I will not do. Razor wire, that is okay. If you see that out in a pasture, that is for bulls. Okay. Bob wire is something to where, like a cow, if it backs up into it or it nudges it, it pokes them and it knows not to go that way. Razor wire is something that is meant to keep you from getting in somewhere or out of something. And I mean, it will just slice you up. Yeah, that is one thing I would definitely not do is razor wire. I hate glass. It just so happens that's my forte now is light tubes and glass. It sucks, but again, it has its perks. Um, you just have to know. I mean, it's unpredictable, but you have to be safe with it. And
Yeah.
that's why you got to be smart when using it. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you ever you get any glass in you?
Oh yeah, man, all the time. I'm usually every time I do a match that has glass, I am in the bathroom afterwards pulling glass shards out of my fingers and I actually
Wow.
have some stuck in my head still. It's been there since Prince of the Death, and that was at the beginning of this year.
Jesus. Wow. Well, that's hats off to you, man, because I don't know if I could do the glass. That's something that I have a friend of mine who does a sideshow performing, and which is a lost art, I think. But he does the whole blockhead. He puts the nail all the way through, and then hammers it into his skull. And he's done like light bulb chewing and eating, and I'm like, dude, I can't look at that. Like the something about the light bulb eating, I'm like, no, can't take. And he's explained to me how you do it and how you do it, quote unquote, safely. But it's just like, nah, I don't think I'll pass on that one, brother.
Yeah, for sure, man. And like I said, there's safe ways to do it, but it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
You can never predict on how a piece of glass is going to break.
Well, some of these matches you do are very lengthy too. I mean, how long? What's your longest match that you've ever done?
Actually, I just wrestled at Hog Rock, which is a big biker rally, and we didn't have a lot of workers there. So me and another guy wrestled for almost an hour the whole time.
Jeez. And that was
Yeah.
using, weapons and glass and everything else?
Luckily, we didn't really have many weapons out there to use. We still did a lot of stuff out on the ground outside of the ring. I mean, we used like trash cans and stuff that was at there for our advantage. I know that whenever that match was over, the biker rally keeps going all night. It's a whole weekend thing. And like normally me and my friends, we'll go walk around and drink and do whatever, watch the shows that are happening and stuff like that. But after that one, man, now I walked around, I think maybe one time and went straight back to the trailer and I was like, all right, guys, I'm going to bed. I can't
Man,
move.
I can't imagine how, exhausting that must be. That's like unbelievable. I mean, I remember, if you go back to like amateur wrestling, what did the match last, 8 minutes tops? And that's if it goes all the rounds. So you have this, and it's like, geez, this goes on for an hour. That's a physical exertion. It's amazing you can walk the next day, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then that next day, I actually had a death match right after that hour-long match, and yeah, I could not wait to be packing my stuff in the car and on my way home. It was the longest day of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever had any, well, this might be a tough one to ask, and you can answer it however you want to, but what would you say your favorite opponent has been? Or favorite opponents, if you can't say just one.
Um, there's a lot of guys that I like to work with. We always put on a good show. The one that stands out to my best knowledge is a guy named Shank Barzini. He plays this almost crazy schizo character, and we blend very well together whenever we're in there in the ring. Um, Definitely every time that we work, there is no punches held back. That guy goes balls to the walls, and after he gives me a couple good ones, you best believe the whole time, yeah, I'm definitely hitting him back as hard as I can. But yeah, every time me and Shank Barzini we step in the ring with each other, man, it's magic. It's awesome.
Now, do you are the body shots real or the face shots or both?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not out there trying to murder somebody with a punch, but they're definitely feeling it.
Yeah, yeah. There's a great old clip, which I'm sure you've seen several times, of the guy that looks like Geraldo Rivera interviewing. Oh, I can't remember who the name of the wrestler is, but it's the guy, little Geraldo looking guy says, "You know what? I think that wrestling is fake." And the guy just, "You think it's fake?" And he just smacks the guy with an
Yeah,
open-handed slap. Do you know that clip?
yeah, I've seen it. Yeah,
That man, that's
yeah,
hilarious.
it is. It is, and at the same time, though, I mean, back then you could do that. Nowadays, if somebody was to do that, there would be all out hell breaking loose. That guy would get fined so much money.
Yeah, and I think he did. I think the reporter did sue the guy kind of famously after that, and I don't know how it turned out, but yeah, that was no joke. That slap, and if only
Yeah.
it really was Geraldo Rivera, I would have loved that, but unfortunately, it wasn't. Just some guy that looked like him. Well, we could go into also some horror stuff since I know you're a big fan. Would you say that there were any horror films that have inspired your style of wrestling or your persona?
Yeah, right now, like I go as Cash Borden. I picked up the Borden last name. I had did some that ancestry or in yeah ancestry thing.com or whatever what in the tree family
Yeah.
tree thing.
Hmm.
Um, I went through there and I was looking and found out that Lizzie Borden is my fourth cousin on my mother's side and on my father's side.
Oh,
So I was
wow. No
like,
shit.
yeah,
Wow.
on both sides of the family. That's crazy. So yeah, I picked up that last name, and then ever since then, man, I've kind of blended the character of Cash in with the Joker, Otis from the Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses. Um, Over at Strictly Insane Pro Wrestling, I have a manager that's with me who's a girl. She is my sister, but like I use her, I I'll pull her up on the ring and be like, "What is my sister giving you a boner there, boy? What are you looking at?" You know, just I mean, weird, creepy stuff like that. So yeah, horror has influenced me a lot, especially in these death matches, man. Like, oh, what is it? Terrified. I just watched it a while back with Art the Clown,
Oh yeah,
and there's that part.
Terrifier. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he's got that girl upside down and he saws her in half.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I've used that already in a match where I've had somebody upside down and I'll grab, like a barbed wire bat and just start sawing away at him like I'm trying to cut him in half, stuff like that. My tag partner down at Strictly Insane Pro Wrestling is a hardcore legend known as Madman Pondo. Um, he was actually in 2001 Maniacs. He's the blacksmith in that with Robert England.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, he's really been a big influence on my career. Also, he is from another small town that's real close to me, and he has been all over the world to Japan, everywhere, just doing this deathmatch stuff. And whenever I started to, dabble in the deathmatch wrestling, that was the first guy that I talked to about it, and asked him questions on how things worked, how you could how do you go out there and you go through all this glass and all these light tubes every night? And he told me, like I can go out there and wrestle for 10 minutes and be more sore doing that than going out there in one of these death matches and getting barely cut up, but people are going to remember it more than anything. And he is 100% true on that.
Yeah, I mean that's something that sticks in your mind, and if you can make a good show out of it, it's quite a spectacle. Um, which is kind of funny. You mentioned, House of a Thousand Corpses. That was the first horror film I ever did. Was a movie called Homesick that starred Bill Moseley, who played Otis, and so that he is a very interesting guy, Chop Top, and Otis, and at that time, House of a Thousand, when we shot it, House of a Thousand Corpses hadn't come out yet. He'd already shot the film, and then there was a long period of time where the film was kind of hanging out, and Universal didn't know what they were going to do with it, and eventually the movie got released and kind of brought Bill back in a big way, and then that was Rejects, and now he just shot. Actually, they wrapped a little while ago on Three from Hell, which is the third film in the series.
Yeah, that's
Um,
going to be awesome, man. I cannot wait to see that. Um, I'm a huge Rob Zombie horror fan. Like a lot of people always shit on his movies, man. But like I don't know, like the new Halloween that just came out, man. I watched it. I love the movie, but there's key points that they took out of there. Like Laurie and Michael being brother and sister. They took that out. Why in the hell is this guy still trying to kill her then? That doesn't make sense to me in that aspect. Going from Halloween 1 and 2 back in the day, the whole reason that he wanted to get her and kill her was because that was his surviving sister. I feel like Rob Zombie on his Halloween remake 1 and 2, he did an awesome job on that. The only thing that I do not like is that the little kid that played Michael is not Michael in the second one. But I mean,
yeah.
I love all of Zombie's work, man. Lords of Salem, I know it's kind of it drags. It took me about 10 times of watching it to finally realize what the hell was going on. But now that I understand it, I like it also. But yeah, like I said, a lot of people knock Zombie for the horror movies that he's done, but I've dug them all, man.
Did you like 31?
Yeah, yeah, 31 was awesome. Um, the damn, I can't think of his name. The guy in the beginning, bloody nosed.
Oh, you're talking about Robert Brake,
Yes, yes.
the
Yeah,
actor.
his
That's the
character in
actor's
that.
name.
Yeah, yeah. His character in that, man, is awesome. Um,
Yeah,
all of those
yeah.
lines and everything.
He's a real interesting character actor. I think he does great. And he was in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. He was the guy in the morgue truck, the passenger.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
also in Three from Hell also when it's coming out.
yeah, Yeah, that's one thing about Zombie. You know, he's very loyal to his people, and he likes working with the same kind of group, which I can completely understand. When you work with people that you whose company you enjoy and whose work you like, why not do it? You know, I've done it. I mean, I've done several movies with Adam Wingard, mainly because he's very talented and because I enjoyed the scripts and stuff. But two, it's always fun to work with your friends. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like okay, as far back as I can remember, like Adam Sandler was one that used to do that. You know, he'd use in all of his movies it'd be the same people playing different roles. You see that a lot with oh, Seth Rogen. He does that in every movie he has also, but it helps them all to be a tighter group and to act better together, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to know someone's rhythm and it's fun to play off of them. Yeah, I guess it's like playing in a tennis match, you know, with somebody that who you know their moves, you know, so it's kind of fun to go back and forth. Um, or in a wrestling match, actually, that would be a good analogy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You got your group of people, that you travel with all over the place. And yeah, you always tend to have better matches with your friends. You're not scared to hit one another, and go balls to the wall. So,
yeah. Yeah. So you say that you like, I had actually a discussion with a friend of mine who he's actually my cousin, but we watched he's a big horror fan. He loves Rob Zombie. And we watched The Lord Salem. And I actually really liked it the first time I saw it. And I couldn't really put my finger on why, but he hated it. And this is a guy who's like Devil's Rejects is his favorite movie kind of ever made, you know. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that. So did you come to like it after you watched it a few times?
yeah, after I finally like understood what was going on and the story behind everything, yeah, I like it. It's a damn good movie.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I should watch it again. I've only seen it twice, but the first time I watched it, I dug it. I just sort of took it as this strange, like surrealistic nightmare, and then I watched it the second time, and then you kind of understand more of the plot and what's going on. I know that he wrote or he co-wrote a tie-in book, and the tie-in book goes into the whole story. So if you want to know just the story part, you can read the book. And if you just want to like experience it as a weird, like hallucinatory dream, you watch the movie, which is kind of interesting. Um, that's an
Yeah,
interesting
that
way.
is.
Not a lot of movies will go through that much effort to give you two different experiences to watch the same story. Um, there's actually a horror actor in that named Ken Faree who works with Rob Zombie a lot, and I've done several conventions with him. He's a really interesting guy. I'll tell you a story about the Devil's Rejects that Bill Moseley told me. You know the scene where Diamond Dallas Page comes into the bar and grabs Otis and throws him through the window,
Yeah,
and then just proceeds to beat the living shit out of him in the street there outside of I can't remember the name, but Ken Faree's character's saloon.
yeah.
Um, in that scene, you know, Mosley was telling me that like Diamond Dallas Page really broke three of his ribs when he was kicking him, and he realized that he was like really laying into him pretty good. And Diamond Dallas Page is a really big guy, and I don't think necessarily he was trying to. But Mosley actually had to go to the hospital after shooting that scene because he had broken I think two or three ribs being kicked by Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah, I can see that. Mosley's he's pretty scrawny. So I'm sure you know, Diamond Dallas Page, I'm sure he just let him have it when he was out there doing it, and that's a lot of actors, it goes back into the old stigma of that, well, wrestling's fake anyways, like the whole Jerry Lawler, Andy Kaufman bit back in the day.
Yeah.
Um, I myself believe that that was all a work, but man, those guys were geniuses at working all the marks out there on that.
Yeah, Andy Kaufman was a really interesting guy. I loved how his whole little his idea of life as performance art. So you never knew what he was doing or if it was real or how real it was. And he would do that. So it seemed like he fit very well into the world of pro wrestling. And yeah, I agree with you, though. I think him and Lawler kind of, you know, worked it out. And,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, Lawler has all but said that's the case in the years since Andy Kaufman died. Unfortunately, Andy Kaufman died very, very young. Uh, uh, Younger than I am now. He actually had a rare form of lung cancer that and never smoked. It just one of those things that took him out, you know. But he was a real smart guy. Really
yeah,
funny too.
yeah, man. Everything that everything they did back then, man, it was just 100% gold. Like I would have loved to have been alive watching that unfold, sitting in the living room in my underwear, being an old man watching that. Yeah, it was definitely good.
Yeah, and the greatest thing about that David Letterman thing is his reaction, because Letterman is so not in on what's going on, you know. And you know, Andy's cussing and yelling and slamming his fist down, and I would love to have been in that studio audience of David Letterman the night that Lawler just whacked him in the face, you know, knocked him off the table, because
Yeah, yeah,
clearly those two guys were the only ones in the room who knew what was going on, you know.
yeah. I don't think that even Kaufman's, producers and stuff like that. I don't even think that they knew that that was all work at the time because I mean, and they played that so good.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's the old story that that Andy Kaufman's manager told, where you know he said he wasn't really in on a lot of Andy's stuff, and in fact, when Andy first said that he had terminal lung cancer, like his manager's first reaction was, "Oh, so that's the next bit," and and he was like, "Oh, that's great. We'll like fake your death, and then you'll come back." And Andy was kind of like, "No, I really do have terminal lung cancer." You know, so uh, you know, God, if you can spring that kind of news on people and they think that you're planning a bit, you're probably pretty good at planning bits. You know.
Yeah, too good.
Yeah, exactly. Um, well, man, we're getting near the end of our time here. But this was a real fun conversation. And yeah, we could probably do another one of these sometime and go even deeper into the world of wrestling and horror.
Yeah, man,
But
I'm 100% down with that. That it was a good time.
yeah, yeah. Now, do you want to tell the audience one more time the event that's coming up tomorrow night?
Yeah, tomorrow night it's in Crossville, Illinois. Doors open at 6 o'clock. It's an event for Crohn's disease. All the money is going to go to a charity to help out with that, and I think there's a family there also that's going to get some of the proceeds for. I believe it's a daughter or something like that has Crohn's disease. But yeah, they'll be there also. All the money that is collected that night will go straight into a charity and then towards helping that family deal with expenses and stuff like that for their daughter who has Crohn's disease. Um,
Excellent. Well, that sounds like a great cause, man. So I would definitely encourage everyone to go out and support that event and to go check out Cash's other events, because pretty much every weekend, right? You're hitting the mat somewhere.
yep, I'm every Friday and Saturday night, sometimes Sundays. I'm traveling all over the state. Um, you can catch me in West Virginia, Indiana, Milwaukee, everywhere there's a wrestling event in Illinois. You can
So is
catch me pretty much at every one of them.
the best way for people to get stay up to date and on your dates is just to hit up your Facebook or
Yeah, hit up my Facebook. That's Cash Borden. Follow me on Instagram under Cash Borden. Um, I usually post the flyers for every event that I'm going to be attending, or even a video promo talking about what will happen, who my opponents will be. Um, so yeah, Facebook and Instagram will be the best spot to catch where I'm going to be at that week.
cool. That's great, man. We'll definitely go over there, friend Cash on Facebook and Instagram, and stay up to date on everything that he's doing. I want to thank everybody for watching the show. And I want to thank Cash. Thank you again, man, for coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. No problem. Thank you very much for having me, man.
It was my pleasure. And so, guys, subscribe to the channel. More great interviews coming up. And until I see you next week, take care of yourselves.